Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the major rock types. So there are three different major rock types, which are igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rock. Let's talk about igneous rocks first. How are they formed? Igneous rocks are formed from the cooling and crystallization of magma, or otherwise known as molten rock. There are two ways that igneous rocks can be formed. Magma that cools slowly within the crust forms intrusive igneous rock. Magma that erupts onto the surface and cools quickly forms extrusive igneous rock. Now, let's discuss how we classify igneous rocks. There are two ways to classify an igneous rock: through its texture and mineral composition. If the igneous rocks have crystals too small to see with the eye, then it is an extrusive rock. These two are examples of extrusive rock. There are no visible crystals here. Igneous rocks that have visible crystals, where you do not need a microscope, are intrusive rocks. These are examples of intrusive igneous rocks. You can see the crystallization in both of them. There are 9 main types of igneous rock textures. It goes all the way from a glassy texture, which means the rock contains no crystals, which would be an example of obsidian. They have this vascular textures, which basically means that the rock has holes formed by expanding gases like bubbles, which means that that is an extrusive rock. As well, igneous rocks are defined by their silica content. Light-colored silica-rich minerals like feldspar, quartz, plagioclase, muscovite, and mica. And then there are also dark-color silica-poor minerals like pyroxene, hornblende, and biotite. So there are 4 categories that we can use to help classify igneous rocks. The first one is felsic. It is silica-rich. This category has very light color minerals and a few dark minerals. Felsic has greater than 65% silicon dioxide. An example of a felsic igneous rock is rhyolite. The intermediate category has equal amounts of light and dark minerals. It has about 55 to 65% silicon dioxide. Intermediate is right here. Mafic is silica poor. This category has dark colored minerals and a few light minerals. Mafic rocks have less than 55% silicon dioxide. And ultramafic has greater than 80% iron-rich dark heavy minerals like olivine and pyroxene. Now let's talk about the second major rock type, which is metamorphic rocks. So how are they formed? Metamorphic rocks are changed as a result of exposure to intense heat and pressure. What are the 5 main factors? There are 5 main factors that control metamorphic processes. The first is the mineral composition of the parent rock. The parent rock is the rock that exists before the process of metamorphism begins. The second is the temperature at which the process of metamorphism takes place. This is important because minerals all have a specific range where they recrystallize into new minerals. The third is the amount and type of pressure during the metamorphosis process. It is also important because it creates the texture of the rock. In the diagram here, we can see the different amounts of pressure that the minerals would be going under. This is equal confining pressure, directed pressure, and shear stress is going to make the rock have a foliated texture, which is very important, and we will get into that later. The fourth is the types of fluids present, like water. This is also an important thing because water can increase the speed of metamorphism. And the fifth one is the amount of time available for metamorphism to take place. It's important that the process of metamorphism is completed for these rocks. So how do we classify metamorphic rocks? There are two ways to classify a metamorphic rock. The first is texture and the second is mineral composition. As mentioned earlier, pressure plays a role in the texture of the rock. A metamorphic rock can either be foliated or non-foliated. A foliated rock indicates that it is formed in an environment of shear stress or directed pressure. Intense pressure causes the rock's minerals to deform and change direction. For example, the minerals are elongated in a direction perpendicular to the main stress, thus creating foliation. So what is foliation? Foliation is the alignment of minerals. In this example, this rock is gneiss, and you can see the lines or foliation of all of these minerals right here. Compared to non-foliated, there are no alignments of minerals anywhere. Non-foliated rocks indicate that there was little to no pressure, or that they were formed near the surface without extreme pressure. The last type of rock are sedimentary rocks. How are they formed? Well, sedimentary rocks are formed from pieces of pre-existing rocks or organic material. There are three different types: clastic, organic, and chemical. Organic sedimentary rocks form from the remains of organisms like plants and animals. Some organic materials are shells, bones that were compressed into rock, carbon, and plant fragments. Inorganic, or also known as chemical, rocks form from mineral crystals precipitated from solutions containing water. Clastic and organic rocks form in similar conditions. It begins with the weathering of rocks that churned into small fragments. These fragments are then eroded and transported by wind, water, ice, or biological activity that takes them into a new location, thus collecting enough sediment to form a solid rock. Chemical sedimentary rock form from chemical precipitation. Precipitation occurs when they dissolve minerals or chemical compound come out of the evaporated water. So how do we classify sedimentary rocks? Sedimentary rocks are classified based on their texture and mineral composition. Clastic has a clastic texture, whereas chemical and organic sediments have a non-clastic texture. Chemical and organic sediments are classified based on their composition. However, clastic rocks are classified by the grain size and shape. The size, sorting, and composition and shape help us understand the processes that took place, as well as help us classify each type of sedimentary rock. So for clastic rocks, you would use this chart to help you classify it. So here we have grain size. The grain size is visibly large here, and then it gets smaller as it goes down. These are the grain shapes and the grain arrangements. Each of these tell you how long the sediments have been transported. The longer they've been transported, the more round and smaller they are. So well-rounded grains and well-sorted arrangements would imply that the sediment has been traveling for a very long time, whereas angular grains and poorly sorted arrangements would imply that the sediment has not traveled that far yet. And that will do for the presentation, and thank you for listening.